Okay, today I'm going to be talking about some simple ways of using the gizmo here and some things that go along with this gizmo. It's in 3D programs, this thing is often called either a gizmo or a transformer, something like that, a move tool, but it basically allows you to move things within the 3D space, either left, so on the x-axis, which is left and right, forward and backwards, so this would be on the y-axis, and then up and down on the z-axis. I'm just going to go ahead and undo all those moves I just did there. And so with this tool, you could also move in kind of both directions this way. If you hold this button here, I'm just going to undo when I don't want to move something. I'll just undo or Control Z. You can move it this way in any direction. And if you click on this there's a little white. It's hard to see, but there's a little white one in the middle, and you can kind of move it anywhere if you do that as well. So this is basically how you can move objects with this gizmo tool. If you're new to using a 3D program, it can be a little bit new to start, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty simple to use. So one thing that can be really nice about it is that if you have a object that you just want to place right next to another object, so let me say I have some type of decor piece sitting here, and instead of if I were to duplicate one and move it over, let's say if I turn this move tool off, so I can actually turn the move tool off by going to this multi-select button and turning that off. And now when I click and drag the object, it'll actually move anywhere. But there's kind of a problem with this, and it's that you lose a lot of control of your object. So if you can see here, I can kind of move the object anywhere I want, but I lose a little bit of the control of how close it is to another object because it's basically trying to move on top of other objects, if that makes sense, right? Because it's in 3D, it sort of can move anywhere. All right, so if I turn this back on, what I might do then is duplicate the object and then just move it in this Y direction. And now I know that it's going to be right next to this in the same sort of space, if that makes sense. All right, and to go along with this, so what kind of works in tandem with the move tool is this snapping settings over here. So by default, it's going to be set to 1/2 foot, so 0.5 feet. You can always change this in the settings button here to inches or centimeters, but I typically just leave it on feet unless I'm trying to get a very specific measurement. So basically what I would do here is, if in this specific situation, if I wanted to move this object to be right next to this object, I would want to know the exact dimensions of this object. So if I click on the object, I'm going to see up here it says 1.83 feet. So let me just type that in, 83. And now if I duplicate this and move it over, it'll move right next to that other object. And if I change this again to inches, it's going to show me it's about 22 inches is the size of this object, I believe. All right, so that's kind of how that would work and how you can move move objects like that. Sometimes it's also easy to go to the top view. If I zoom in here to the object, now I can move objects excuse me, and see exactly where they are. So the top view, excuse me, can be nice to kind of get a 2D camera view of this. And I often go back and change this snap settings back to 0.5 just because it's a little bit easier to see things or to move things in this sort of 1/2 foot space. Okay, sorry, I should have cleared my throat a while ago, but anyways, we'll go over kind of the rotate and scale tool. So these three sort of icons here they basically change this gizmo. So if I turn this to rotate, it'll change this into a rotation gizmo so that you can rotate the object in different rotation directions. And then if I change this to scale, it'll allow you to actually scale the object as well. So these three things are really important and used just a lot within the program. So especially the move tool to be able to move in any direction, and then rotating thing is definitely important, and then scaling things. So let me go ahead and just show some more examples of how I have this whole scene set up and how I might rotate and scale and do some things like that. So for instance, if I were to, let's put in, or I'm going to add in a new logo. So I'm going to add in, I have this logo that I'm just going to, once I click on it, it'll show up here in the middle. If I select it now, you can see, for one, it's kind of in the middle of the front of the screen here. So I want to move it back to the drape here. So to do that, I'm going to use this Y-axis screen arrow here, which will move it backward. So I'm just going to drag that. And I want to make sure, too, to drag along this arrow here. If I drag kind of like right here, then it's going to move it up and down and sort of stuff. So I want to stay on this arrow here. You could also go to your top view and sort of move the object this way, which might be easier to see exactly where it's at. You notice that you can't really see the object, which is because the object is so thin, because it's just kind of a PNG image logo, that it's not really showing up in that 2D view. So it might be easier just doing this 3D view. All right, so once you've got it here, what I would do then is change to the scale button. And from here, it needs to be wider. So I'm going to use the red part of this icon here and move it that way. Right? And then I'm going to move it down a little bit this way. I could also use the in-between one here to move them both at the same time. But I might do this. And then if I click on the object, if you kind of click off of it and then back onto it, you can see the approximate size up here will change. So I can see that this object is about 27 feet by 6 feet high. That does also take into account any blank space around the object. So for these logos, you might have to be aware of that. But anyway, so now I have my logo. Maybe that's the size I want. I can just move this into place here, and then I'll leave that as is. So for another thing, you might, let's say, drag in a piece of drape, a panel of drape. So maybe I have this drape panel here, and maybe I want it to be a different size. So up here it says it's about 12 feet wide by 12 feet high, I believe. Oh, okay, it's about 12 feet wide, including the bases, but I believe the actual panel is about 10 feet wide. If I wanted to drag over it, I could see exactly how wide it is. And yeah, it's about 10 feet wide. So if I wanted to adjust this, I could go ahead and scale it. So now I can scale the height of it like this. And if I click on it again, I'm going to see that the height changed to 13.8 feet. And we're going to adjust this as well. We have some updates coming up, but this should update in real time when you're adjusting it. We'll just show for now. If you click on it again, it'll show that it's updated. And then if I wanted to maybe make it skinnier, you can see that it'll change size over there. And then possibly I want to rotate it. So let's go over some rotation examples. So it's easy in this 3D camera view, this orbit camera view, to move around by rotating your camera with the holding down your right mouse button and then just rotating around things. And you can focus in on the selected object by hitting this zoom key, and that will focus in on that object. And then you can also additionally use your QWEASD keys on your keyboard to be able to kind of move all over the place with your camera, which helps a bit. So let's say that I wanted to rotate this and kind of make, I don't know, this is probably a bad example, but I'm just going to rotate it in this direction here. So I use this blue one to rotate it this way. If I were to use this green one, it would kind of rotate it left and right like that. And then the red one would rotate it forward and backward here. And you can see kind of a better example of it if you go to the top view here, then you can just rotate it this way. Cool, so that's what I might do that, and then I might, add it, place it wherever you want to place it, right? Let's say you wanted to rotate it exactly in a specific direction or a specific degrees. So you would change to rotate, and then you would change this to some specific amount of degrees. So it defaults to 5, but you can change this to anything. So maybe you want it to rotate in 45 degrees. So now when you rotate, it'll rotate in 45 degrees. So this can definitely be helpful for specific things that you're doing. But yeah, once you've kind of mastered how to use the rotate, move tool, and the scale tool, things start to get a lot quicker for you, just in creating things. So now I have this object here. I'm going to duplicate it, move it over, and then rotate it the opposite direction. And now I kind of have this mirrored setup here, even though this doesn't really make a ton of sense of what's going on here, but I just kind of as an example. Okay, so cool. So that's kind of that as far as how the gizmo works. Yeah, there's some additional things that you can do with this as far as, you could do a lot of customizing if you were to drag out basic shapes, and then sort of use these scale tools, or you could change the dimensions, but you could use the scale tools and the rotate tool to kind of get an object to be a specific sort of size and, whatever sort of custom thing you're doing with that. I often will also just kind of adjust objects slightly depending on if they, just to make them look a little bit more accurate. So, for example, I think when I laid out this drape originally, I had these screens kind of like right here, and I just wanted to lower this drape a little bit. So I could kind of move it, or I could just leave it where it was and then scale it down just a little bit until it fits right in line with that. So you can make these kind of minimal adjustments there. And yeah, okay, so that's kind of it for now. I just wanted to go over those basic functions of how you can use the move, rotate, and scale tools to your advantage. And yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. And if you want to set up any training or live demos or anything like that, or have any questions, you could either use the chat feature on our website. You can send me an email or comments if we have a video up. And yeah, we'll definitely go over anything. So, all right, thanks, and see you next time.